Some questions. I'm just going to do a brief introduction for both of you, so you both know professionally, who the other person is. I'm Professor Ebun Clark. So Professor Clark is the founder and managing director of the Lagos School of English and Mathematics, Nigeria's first consultancy on English and mathematics. The consultancy conducts workshops on English language and communication skills. She began her university teaching career as a pioneer staff at the School of Drama, University of Ibadan, Nigeria in 1963, and in 1965 was appointed lecturer in the Department of English, University of Lagos. She rose to the rank of Director of Center for Cultural Studies and Professor of English University in 1983 and 1985 respectively. She was a visiting fellow at Corpus Christi College, University of Cambridge, and a senior fellow of the British Council from 1989 to 1990. In 1997, she was elected Vice Fellow of Churchill College, Cambridge. On retirement from the University of Lagos in 1991, she became the pioneer head for Human Resources Department, Magnum Trust Bank. From 1992 to 1995, Magnum merged with other banks in 2006 to form Sterling Bank plc. She has conducted communication skills sessions for various international organizations in Nigeria, West and East Africa, and was a judge for the 2001 Commonwealth Writers' Prize for the African region. She also served as an assessor for the Nigerian National Order of Merit from 1984 to 1991. Professor Clark is a member and fellow of several professional bodies, and she is noted in the Directory of the United Nations Economic Council for Africa on African women professionals. So please welcome, you're very welcome for joining us. And then on to Olufisayo Bakare, who has a background in interior design and has trained her eye to find the rare balance between simplicity with African ancestry in her work. Her keen interest in carving the phenomenal out of the familiar has inspired her curatorial practice by establishing her as an ally in the preservation, documentation, and representation of African culture through various art forms. The designer cum curator pays close attention to the works of indigenous and Pan-African artists and maker communities by establishing unique platforms for accessibility. Positioned as a cultural gatekeeper of Black histories, she recognizes that educating the masses through artistic and cultural ecosystems is at the bedrock of society. By connecting varied dialogues through an exchange of ideas, Bakare celebrates histories and their underpinned symbology. Having dedicated over a decade of her career to supporting the arts, Bakare has stepped into the limelight by partnering with the Olufisayo Museum of Art to enforce their mandate by assisting with the ambition of educating through the arts. She is an integral part of the Pre-Colonial Societies of Nigeria program, formulating the teaching manual for the Ile-Ife Pre-Colonial Society. Buttressing this, Bakare is an active member of the ongoing Museums of the Future program facilitated by the Goethe Institute. Bakare's passion for travel, anthropology, and culture has aided several platforms for creative expression with businesses such as Interior Living and Yellow of Lagos, which I love. She's joining forces with institutions like the Olufisayo Museum of Art to curate exhibitions and construct site-specific installations within the creative sector and art world. Thank you, you're very welcome.
Thank you for
joining us. So we have two powerhouses in the building, and I can't wait to delve into the conversation. So, as discussed, but I will kind of cover the ground again of what the exhibition and this conversation is about. So this conversation is our inaugural session of our conversations with the series. So I'm very grateful to debut it with the both of you. We opened an exhibition for International Men's Month titled "I Am and Nothing Else," showcasing 5 female artists, 3 Nigerians and 2 South Africans. And the point of the perspective the exhibition is trying to take is the experience of the African woman through the eyes of African female artists. And basically if you're looking through the works in the exhibition, they kind of capture the breadth of what it is to be an African woman. And just to show that African women are multifaceted. And there's a whole breadth and range of emotions and perspectives that African women take and the space that they also occupy. What we're going to talk about in this conversation is more about African women artists, Nigerian women artists, and where they stand like in history, and not just history, but also right now. Because history does, in 10 years, what is current and what is present day will be history. We looked at as history in 20, 40 years. And so what we want to do through this very short conversation, we probably can't do in breadth and in depth, is celebrate the impact of female artists past and present. So I think the first question that I will just throw out into the ether, and whoever wants to take it can take it, is, where is, it's a bit of a rhetorical question, like where are the female African artists or the female Nigerian artists in the artistic canon? And what I mean by canon, which I think might be maybe too of a linear word to use here, but just in the conversation, let me not say canon, in conversation, we talk about great, Nigerian artists, and we talk about the different schools, and the names that crop up, you rarely hear the names of Nigerian female artists. So I'm asking, where are these women? Why are they not in conversation?
Well, I think that you do hear some Nigerian artists, but they're mainly in the diaspora.
Okay.
Yes, you have Odutola, you have Akinyi. They are mentioned and very well regarded, and others as well. But unfortunately, to be known, you have to go into diaspora. I am a member of a group, international group. We Zoom each week, and different people with love for art. And when they were showing too many Nigerian women, in particular diaspora, I had to push them to say, please, let's go to Nigeria itself. You will see lots of highly talented artists, Nigerian female artists, who have not yet gone into diaspora, but are doing a studio practice in Nigeria. And they've had 2 sessions on Nigerian artists, female artists, in Nigeria. On Nengi,
yes,
and Deborah Shegun. They'll go to others as well, because we have a lot of talent in Nigeria itself. Those who have had years and decades of studio practice. And we can even go back to the 50s and 60s with Afi Eko, who was Ebun trained in slave school.
Yes.
Just
fashion.
Let's say an artist who was just skillful and not trained, she's highly trained, and brought out lovely ones. Where they are, I love to know where they are.
Yeah.
We can even search for her, or I'm sure they're around somewhere. And we had galleries that featured Nigerian artists, female artists, but it was mainly men, I agree. Because how many women go into creative art anyway? In my old time, there were few of us. And those of us who went into it were considered a little bit weird, but we had to fight to get heard and to get seen. And the Nigerian female artists in those days were not really considered as major artists. I'm glad to see we have more, because when I was director of the Center for Cultural Studies, I asked Professor Bayomi Baba, I think you know him.
Yes.
He was the head of fine art at that time. And I said, can't you introduce a female artist for us to showcase? And between him and Dele Jegede, they couldn't give me anything. That was in the 80s. Can you imagine now you're surrounded by Nigerian female artists and South African artists? We've gone a long way.
Yes.
And we've gone a long way pretty fast. And I think that's because we've had more Nigerian art schools coming up, beyond Yaba College of Tech, and beyond Ife, which was soon after one of the early university department of arts. We've gone beyond that now. We have women who are going into arts. But let me tell you something, they do drop out. Quite a lot. Out of sheer disappointment that they can't make money from it.
Right.
And lack of support. And I think that's about as much as I can say for now. That we have them, but they are known, but they are known more when they go abroad. and they are known from here. And that's what I'm trying to correct. This group I'm a member of.
I think piggybacking off of what was just said, I think those of the female artists that know they practice don't really have to prove that they're female artists, right? I'm an artist and so I create art, the end. And there is no real cultivation to go and pick out these talents where they are, because they're in the studios, they're working in the outskirts of the conversation. Just like now you're asking about where they are, but there is no female artist to actually speak up for female artists, right? We are a curator, collector, and we're on the periphery of the conversation, not really speaking to the soul of the individual that is affected. And I think that's what often happens. And it's usually the person that has the narrative that kind of is heard first. And so by the time all this noise is happening, the artist is still continuing her work in her studio. It doesn't really affect her. But if you bring her into the conversation and onto the stage, as it were, from the studio and onto the stage, it would be a much more impactful conversation, because now we're going to the nitty-gritty of the individual we're speaking about. Right? So speaking for them and on behalf of them, I'm not qualified to do that. And there are some artists that I have as friends, some female artists I have in close range. Before the musician on exhibition, the Invincible Hands, and you kind of just see the struggle, right? Nengi, for example, is a friend of mine, and she is represented by a gallery in the diaspora. And I think they do know that they have to go out to get their voices heard. And why is that? Before Nigeria was Nigeria, the country we know it to be now, it was a geographic location, right? And it was through the colonial masters that we had the mission schools, which taught art. What was it before then? And so perhaps when they left, they took their knowledge with them. And so there is always that rite of passage, supposedly, that where you have to go back before you're known out in the world. Does that make sense? And so it's what are our own institutions and how are we celebrating these artists, these female artists that have been marginalized for such a long time? And I think onus is on us to kind of define that. And when we say African art, and Ben would always question that. He always wanted to be known as an artist. Don't marginalize me, because Africa was always looked at less than, right? So when we bring an African female artist, I understand the cultural respect of it, but after a while, they're going to want to shake off the dust of being called African, because it's so linked to such a bad place in time. And don't forget the narrative. It's the narrative of the colonial masters that brought in the conversation of art. Before then, it was primitive. And there's still their tags and their labeling, right? So these are things that we kind of need to kind of table and remove and perhaps evolve from in our conversation and the way in which we relate with the ecosystem at large.
So I think there's like a lot of nuance, and like probably based on what you said, which is I agree with, a lot of layers to the conversation, because now you're bringing the impact of colonialism, and also like involving the female artists who are there now in conversations, but also looking, because I came in obviously into art as an outsider. I didn't study art in school. I came in I fell into it. And so my first learning from like when I started learning about artists was mainly male artists. Like even just people who had paved the way, people who, when they tell you these are the ancestors of the arts industry, people who took Nigerian arts to the world, took it global. You never hear, I at least wasn't hearing any names of female artists. And even when we're then trying to capture all the information, the Zaria school, it was all male artists. And so in that Zaria school or in the Oshobo school, are you trying to tell me there are no female artists in those schools? Was it that they were not there, like they were not allowed. It was like a boys' club, I don't know, or they were there, but somehow during the documentation process, they were just like kind of pushed aside. These are the questions that I kind of had when I was learning about art, just from osmosis and being around artists and collectors and galleries. So that's something I question, because we had recently there's a light equality exhibition that opened in the UK, and we're asking what light equality is art, you know. But right now it's just kind of theirs for the time being. And so these are the things that happen often. And it's also what you said about going out there. Is that what we're kind of doomed to go down that path, because it's the path that's been laid out for us from before? So these are questions. I want to ask, what do you think kind of caused that? I don't want to say the erasure of the women in the conversation. I'm talking about not the women now, but the women back then, the life equalities, and the other. I was reading about a lady, I can't remember her name, who was supposedly Yusufu's teacher, and apparently he learned from her, and I'd never heard about her until like a month ago.
Budaga Ngu therefore made a vital contribution to the development of the Nigerian art canon, as her students went on to play founding roles in nurturing later generations of artists, setting up art schools, and influencing the shape of Nigerian art into the present day. So there's actually quite a lot written about her here, and her influence is undeniable. But I've never heard about her.
Because that's the lot of teachers.
Right. Education has
I'm
been
a
key.
teacher. You know by my students, when you know not by me. That's the whole point of teaching. You mold minds, and you roll on that what influences another generation and so forth. And especially if you're a pioneer.
Right.
Pioneers are never considered.
Right.
No, very rare. In any society. Which I find very sad, because without the pioneers, you may not have certain disciplines. You may not have certain businesses and so forth. It's only the people who have made it that are heard of, not the people who created it.
That's right.
Very
Everything,
important.
especially in our
So
society.
that's why you don't hear about her. You don't hear too much about Alfie. It's about the same generation as she is. She went into teaching. Alfie went into professional. But you hear about her. All right? Let's go back from the beginning of pre and post, meaning post-colonial art and women there. We find it very fascinating to know that the men created, but the women were the gallerists.
Yes. Still gatekeepers, yeah.
The women were the gallerists. We had one in Ibadan called The Loom, owned by Mrs. Ademola, and Mrs. Begum Hendricks. Mrs. Frances Ademola was the wife of Justice Neko Ademola, first wife, and Begum was the wife of a professor in the Ibadan University Medical School. Right? Both were South Africans, South African Malay. And these two had this wonderful art gallery called The Loom. And it had an enormous influence on the development of art itself. Okay? Then you had the Gong. I think that one was owned by Emily Imokade, who also lived in Auntie, the mother of Imokade. She had an art gallery. And there was another one, Alfie herself had an art gallery.
Yes, she did.
So the art galleries were controlled by women, not by men. And you're saying that that's still the case?
Yes, that's still the case. Most definitely.
There are more women in art galleries
Yes.
than men? Are you sure?
Most definitely.
Really? I would have thought it's the other way around.
Even
You
the
really list the names of top galleries.
okay,
I'm not just saying any galleries, I'm saying the top galleries that make and shape who you are. Are they all women
Yes.
too, that make and shape?
I
Give
think
me
so. So, and we have Cole, owned by the Gallery. We have Arts 21, owned by
Yes, you have Dream.
We have My Dream,
My Dream.
owned by
You
Simisola.
have Me Care.
We have SM Contemporary Art, owned by Anthony.
What your own?
So SM Contemporary Art, and Society of Biafra.
Oh, Biago, yes,
Yes.
of course, that's right.
So yes, those are
But if you count the men, would they not outnumber the women?
Maybe.
Yeah.
But the movers and shakers
What,
and the women.
Yes. Whatever happens to female artists also happen abroad. That's why you have the guerrilla women in America who formed, black women who formed to just shake and disrupt the traditional art world and force the dealers, curators, museum owners to look at women. They carried out actually guerrilla warfare. And they call themselves the guerrillas. I hope you know about them. I'm sure you do. Yes. And they, why was that necessary in 21st century America? Because very few attention was being paid on women artists. And it's in the last 20 years, I think, really, you had that incredible move of female artists coming to the forefront through online galleries like Saatchi Art, that is owned by women. Many women control the online gallery. All right? And they show a lot of women as well. They have help there. But it's still pretty backward in America and Britain and Europe in general. Women still have to fight. So if you're still backward in those places, what is it like here?
Right.
That's why I tell you that every year, thousands of graduates come out of art schools because there are lots of them now. When I went into university, there was no one. In university, as I tell you, Ife was the first. Not Ife. Ibadan was the first in theatre, but not in visual art. Right? And how many make it anyway? You curators who curate. You're the ones who bring them to the forefront.
Right.
How many can you do? How many actually make it in a year? How many make it as a career? It's the same in all the creative arts. How many make it in theatre? How many make it in literature? How many make it in music?
There's also
How many female musicians are there? How many female major literary figures are there?
sending to the home as well.
It's a case in creative arts in general.
It is
And it's up to the women to move things forward.
Yeah.
Men are not going to do it for you.
No.
That's why you had the guerrilla girls in America.
We start a club.
They really were. They wore guerrilla masks.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, amazing.
It's amazing you don't know about it. They shoot the whole place. And they wore blacks. All black. They were double jeopardy. We're women and we're also black.
Black, yeah.
So our narrative is new.
Yes.
The fighting
on
spices.
both. That's why they went into guerrilla warfare with everyone. All right? Nigerian women haven't had to do that because, to a certain extent, female artists, however little or what, have always been there. Only not as much as men. Again, you got to think of how many parents will allow women to go and do art.
That's how mine started.
My father, I keep saying, was an incredible character who allowed me to go and do drama. In those days, in the 50s. Have you ever heard of that? And he knew I was totally useless in business. And he was. And he knew not to put me there. So he allowed me to do what I wanted to do. And I excelled in it, by God's grace. All right? How many parents allow their children to go into arts, both male and female, more female? You got to start from there. To be able to discuss that how many make it.
Yes.